Welcome to Homicide Life on the Set, a podcast about the Emmy Award-winning television show Homicide Life on the Street, with myself, Chris Carr, and Susan Ingram. On today's episode, we're joined by Toni Lewis, who played Detective Terri Stivers. Hello everybody, so today we are joined by Toni Lewis, who played Detective Stivers, and I think we had a really interesting chat with her. But before we begin, how are you doing, Susan? You all right?
Good, Chris. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, good.
This was, I think I keep saying how terrific these conversations are, and this was another terrific one, and just thanks to her for her time and her candor. And it was really delightful and also just eye-opening. So many of these conversations have been eye-opening, and this one was too.
Yeah. How many episodes was she on the show for?
Toni was on 44 episodes from 1996 to 1999, also in Homicide the movie, which we often don't mention. I think I forget because I didn't work on the movie. And then after that, she also was on Oz and Heroes, among many other network television shows.
Yeah. And also in The Wire as well. She was an FBI agent in The Wire for 3 episodes. She's crossed over quite a few times with Tom Fontana and David Simon. So, real veteran of the kind of Baltimore output, should we put it that way? I don't know, the Baltimore dramas that have been made.
So I did also want to mention Toni was very involved with the hair department because they kept getting notes from NBC about her hair, which is kind of odd. But she keeps mentioning Mary, and I did just want to give a shout out to Mary D'Angelo in the hair department, but also Artis Cohen, Judith Bickerton, Sherry Bramlett, and Michelle Johnson, who were all on the hair department throughout the show.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for that. Well, let's jump into the episode, and we will catch you all on the other side.
Well, first I want to say it's so good to see you. I used to see you behind the camera. I mean, like behind everything, the camera. And you were my focus for a lot of the time because I as an actress, and Homicide was my first thing. It was my very first thing. I'd never done TV before. I mean, I'd done some background work, that kind of thing, but it was my first. So you were my focus. So thank you for being there.
Yeah, a couple of the women actors have said it helped having a woman's face there.
It did.
Obviously, there were other women, but once we rolled, I was the last one before I hit that slate and ran away and hid behind a wall somewhere. So cool. Well, thank you. So that is amazing, telling us that was your first thing, because I went back and I had looked at all the episodes. Tom had sent me the DVDs because I didn't have them. I was looking at it from the local library before streaming happened, and then of course being able to look at. So I looked at the whole thing, and then when streaming started, I was able to go back and start looking at everything again. But for you to say that was your first thing, and you had an auspicious entrance in that show,
Yeah.
I mean. Yeah,
Nobody knew.
You showed up in...
Nobody knew who I was. Yeah. Nobody were like, who is this girl? Who is she? Where's she coming from? Who is she? I mean, everybody thought like, oh, she's just a Tom hire, but that wasn't the way it went down. I mean, I knew Tom, but we weren't like friends at that point. I love him. He's my soul. He's my part of my soul family now, but at that point, I didn't know him really, and I just knew the work, and I knew that I wanted to, because I'm a musical theater actor, I'm a stage actor, and everything goes really, stage work is slower, so everything is slow, and you take your time and you really get into the character, but you have that time to do here. And I knew that it was going to be a challenge. I didn't know how much of a challenge it was going to be, but I was like, I got to get on this show. I have to be on this show. And I begged for an audition. And I went in to see Lou DiGiamo, and I was like, but he was so amazing. He was truly, and I'm not sure that he's still with us, but he was truly an actor's casting director. He really took time and explained what the scene was going to be and what was going to happen in the characters and all the stuff and all the background. I knew all that stuff anyway, but the scene went better than I expected, and from what I hear, the scuttlebutt, I don't know exactly what happened after that, but I was told that Tom told Lou DiGiamo that he didn't really have to, say she's in, but Lou DiGiamo was like, yeah, you need to see this girl. So
So jumping on from that, go back a little. What was your, if that was your first TV show, what was your entree into acting? How did you get into acting, and then get to Homicide to go, beg for that audition?
I put myself out a lot further than I'm actually ready to go, because I'm very, very shy and introverted. And I decided that, and what I wanted to be more than anything in the world was a singer. And, and I'm a singer, and I wanted to be, Diana Ross. I wanted to be, that woman. And I got into singing. I started, doing choir work and all that stuff. And then I got into musical theater, and it just caught me. I wasn't expecting to be on television, but through all the work that I had already done, through background work and stuff like that, I was like, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do this. But, the safety of the theater, like I was a part of the Westport theater group, and I got to meet so many amazing older actors who were, from vaudeville and that kind of thing. And they would always sort of, impart their wisdom to me. And, I worked with Brett Summers and Iris Luce and a lot of these old head actors who just wanted to take you under their wing and just, give you the scuttlebutt, how to do it, how to survive. And I really admire them and am grateful to what they did for me. So that's how I got into acting, was through.
And was this in New York? Were you?
Well, I joined moved to Connecticut, got married, had a baby, moved to Connecticut, and I still wanted to act. So I went to Bridgeport Theater and did some musicals there. Joined the Westport Theater Artists Group, and I don't know if they still have a Both Coasts group. I don't even know if the group is still going, but I did that, and then how did I do? Oh, because of my brother-in-law, he was working with Tom at the time, and they were doing some theater work together, and then that's how I met how my husband met Tom, and then he was hired because my husband, I'm gonna he's not gonna tout himself or toot his own horn, but
go ahead.
he's pretty friggin' good, and with music, and he's just got this innate sense of how things work with engineering and all that stuff. And that's why I fell in love with him. His hands. He's just got great hands. So So I did that. I started, he got hired and he started doing the work. And I think I started in the 5th season. So he did 4 seasons of the show before I was like, I have to do this. I have to do this before it's over, because if I don't, I'm going to kick myself and it's going to be bad. So that's how I got in.
So you were watching 4 seasons. And Reed told us a similar story that he was watching it going, I have got to get on that show. It's interesting.
I was watching the seasons, and Chris, my husband Chris, would get the scripts, and I would go through the scripts as well and break down the scripts myself and start to break down the characters. And I really looked at Kay Ballard, the character of Kay Ballard, and I really loved what Melissa Leo did with her character. And I just felt like there was no other woman on TV at that point who was that gritty and real, and she was not playing around. So I was like, I like that girl. So I was like, I want to be like that.
So did you know they were casting for the Terri Stivers part? What you just went in blind and said, I need to audition? Or
I went in blind. I just wanted to do anything. I didn't expect to get a big part. I just wanted to get on the show, right? And I was like, if I just get on the show, then I can prove myself and I can, do something different. I don't know. But I got thrown into the deep end, and it was sink or swim.
Amazing. And I was just watching that first episode today where I mean, the opening line is I'm looking for I'm looking for Stivers, and I'm going to smack him when Lewis walks into the morgue. And you walk up to him and get your face in his face and say, take your best shot, pal. I mean, what a great entrance for your character.
I'm from Chicago. I'm from the south side of Chicago, and nobody steps up to me like that. It was fun because I'm not, I'm not a person who's, like I said, I'm an introvert. I'm not a person who's in your face, but yeah, I can be in your face if you push me hard enough. And I think that came through with the character, with the Stivers character. If she got pushed far enough, she would lose it, and she would give you what you have been asking for.
Yeah, right in that first episode, you had to really stand up. You had to stand up to Lewis when you're fighting over your witnesses and all that.
I was shaking like this the whole time. I was shaking the whole time. And there was a funny thing in and I'm sure Clark laughed about this a lot, and I'm sure he laughed at me. But we went to like a drug den, and we were shooting in this dark drug den, and there, stuff all around and everything. And we were supposed to high five. And I asked him to practice the high five because I don't high five people.
That was when you open the refrigerator and see like the 20 keys of of heroin or whatever it was.
Exactly. And he laughed at me, and I laughed, but I was dead serious because I didn't want to look like an ass.
Wow. Because you come off so sure of yourself and so cool and so self-assured in that first episode.
It was all bluster.
I was wondering about your sort of inspiration for the characters. Obviously, you've mentioned the previous sort of actors. Were there any sort of like real life sources that you drew on as well?
Well, I have like 5 cops in my family, so.
Oh wow!
But my inspiration for the character was my niece, who is a Chicago police officer. She's been with the department for maybe 30 years or something like that. But she was when she first started out, because she's a shorty like me. I'm 5 feet, 5'2", I'm 5'1", I don't know. I cheat sometimes. But she's a shorty like me, but this girl, she will jump into the fray in a minute. They were always calling her like, watch out because Stacy's coming. And she will dive. She would dive into a group of people if they were fighting. She would dive into that. And I was like, why are you doing that? She's like, I don't know. I just did it. It was her way of doing it. So it was just like, just be, courageous. Just get in there and do what needs to be done. And that's the kind of person she is. And I admire her and I love her to death. She's just she's a great human being, and she really cares about people. And when I first got the job, when I actually when we actually moved, because we moved to Fells Point, we lived on Fell Street, and there was a gun range that was maybe 3 blocks away. And when I got there, I went to the gun range to practice using a Glock, how to use it, how, to feel the recoil, so I wouldn't be, surprised if I ever had to do that. I figured out a way to manage a ride along with a Maryland policewoman. She was a detective. I think she was homicide detective, and I can't remember her name. Oh my gosh. But she was so wonderful. She took me to a scene where it was actually a drug overdose. So because I was a narcotics cop, I wanted to really sort of see what that was all about. So right off the bat, we got to the scene. She took out a handful of peppermints and started handing them out to the people at the scene, going, hey, hey. And everybody was like, hey, sweetheart, hey, how you doing? How you doing? And she was so wonderful. She was like, hey, Pete. And she handed people candy and use this. It's gonna help you. And then she walked in, and the guy who overdosed, I guess he had just fell off the couch onto his knees, and then he fell down onto his head. And so his cap fell over his face, so I couldn't see his face, but it just like walking into that situation was deathly quiet. And even the cops were just quiet. Everybody was quiet. It was a scene because the relatives were out back. They were, so they were on the scene. Nobody was really talking, but and I laughed because I didn't know what to do, but she said, look at this guy. His last statement to the world is kiss my ass. And I thought, this is the kind of thing that you have to do when you're looking at this stuff every day. You have to find something to lighten the energy, and she was able to do that. And
so much in the book and the show was the dark humor they used to survive that.
Yes,
right?
Yes, and it's
so
true.
Cool that you had cops in your family to know about, and then to be able to go on a ride along. Wow, so you came with a little bit of stuff.
Well, I like to do my research, and they even invited me to the lodge, to the police lodge. I went and had drinks with the cops, and it was awesome. It was so awesome. It was such an awesome experience, and I'll never forget it. And I'll always be grateful to them. They just they pulled me in and they enfolded me, and it felt really safe.
Now, some of the other. So we haven't talked to everybody, obviously, because we can only do this monthly. But both Melissa and Isabella talked about how much the wardrobe informed their characters. And you had a very specific wardrobe. Your wardrobe was not bland by any sense. It was not, you were not disappearing into the background. I mean, you had the black leather jackets, you had the puka shell necklace. I mean, you were really hip, but also tough, but also sexy, because I think at the end of the first episode, you and Clark are having martinis in the waterfront, and you're talking about life, and talking about how difficult life is, and he mentions that he's having trouble in his marriage, or he's taking, and you say, well, if you ever take a break from your marriage, let me know or look me up. And I was like, go girl. Like, she's got every angle covered. She is tough. She knows her shit,
and she goes for what she wants.
And she's got his eye already, right? So did that did you come with that feeling of that character, or did that wardrobe help build that sort of sensibility as well?
Tina was she just felt like she had her finger on the pulse of every character from the very beginning, right? So it was all about the trusting that Tina knew exactly how to put your character together, right? And so I never really had any problems with how they dressed me or anything. I loved it. I loved it, especially when the orange is my favorite color. It's the safety color.
And rust and orange colors, a lot of that.
Yeah, that was my color. And she was, I loved her. She was awesome. And
that's Tina Negro, everybody out there.
Yeah. She was awesome. And
wardrobe designer.
And she actually made my daughter a Halloween costume one time. It was so elaborate. She was like a space dog. And
it's great.
And she just did it, it's like out of the goodness of her heart. And everybody was so like, it was a family, it felt like a family. And while we were there. So, yeah.
So you lived on Fell Street. How did it feel? So you had some familiarity maybe because of Chris.
Yeah.
And sort of knowing some of the creators peripherally. But what did I mean, you said you were nervous and you were shaking. What was it like to jump into that ensemble cast? And then now I just noticed this morning when I was looking everything up, you started, Alex was already the cameraman. So Jean had done his first 4 seasons and Alex came in season 5. Nevertheless, still, although the show looked a little different because Alex liked hard light a little more, backgrounds were a little darker, contrast was a little higher. It had a darker feel. It still was the same kind of never-ending motion camera work.
Got to go.
So it was like those two things coming into that gigantic, amazing cast you'd been watching for 4 seasons already, and then with a camera that never stopped moving.
It was really hard for me in the beginning. I'm not gonna lie. It was hard because like I said, it was my first thing. So, I didn't have a lot of my stuff was like pretending to know what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. And Yaphet was one of the people who sort of took me under his wing and gave me some pointers. He was awesome. I don't know why he liked me. He just I like you. I'm like, okay. And Richard Belzer and
so you didn't know any of the cast prior to?
No, I mean, I didn't really even I didn't work with the older cast much, right? When I came in, it was I worked with Clark and I worked with Belzer.
And Melissa was still there at that point.
Melissa was, I think she was
in at least that first episode.
That first episode. But then I didn't, the only time I met Melissa was when we did cast pictures.
So you weren't in scenes together. Interesting.
No, we weren't. I never did a small scene with, I don't think I did maybe I did do a small scene with Andre and Kyle. I don't know. But Reed was the one, Reed was the one who left a mark. Reed Diamond. He actually left a mark.
Oh, get out, a real mark.
Yeah.
All right, Reed. Listen up, Reed. He listens to all our episodes, and they have their own podcast now too. So, okay. Here's a good Reed story. I can't wait to hear this.
Well, it was after the whole Luther Mahoney thing, and he was, he did the right thing in the end, and that scene that we did outside the courtroom, and when I lit into him, and he kept grabbing me, and every time he grabbed me, he would twist my arm a little bit, and I was like, and I was getting madder and madder and madder. every time we did a take, I would get madder and madder. I wouldn't say anything to him, but I was like, oh, fucking. I was fucking. Like, and when I got home, my whole arm was like bruised, and I was like, oh man, what we do for the art. And I was like, because I have like some of the CDs, like the OCDs, the ADHD kind of things. So it's hard. It was really hard for me in the beginning, maybe even throughout, to pick up things really quickly because of the CDs. So when they do changes, when they do the script changes and stuff and stick them in, it was always the big horror for me, because because things switch around, and because as a theater actor, I could take the time and write, and I would write out my lines. I just keep writing them out so that I can.
Because that helps get in your head, right?
It would help me get into the head. So it was Reed was the one who left the mark. He was the one.
Wow.
And I saw him
next time we see him, next time we see him, I'll punch him in the arm for you.
I saw him years later. He was like,
no,
Toni.
I'd love to do that, really.
I saw him years later. He's like, Toni, hi. I'm like, hi. I didn't
Don't touch
think
me.
you knew me. but yeah.
Right.
It's okay.
Wow. So that was after the shooting, and when it was into the big mess of, who's guilty. Was it a good shooting? What, so it was everybody was keyed up at that point, right? I guess he was pretty keyed up about his character, whether he was righteous or not. And at that point, everybody had decided, I guess, he wasn't righteous.
Well, he did,
he was going to get away with it.
Eric Overmyer, who wrote that script, it was like, you did the right thing in the end. And he did, it was like, there was some shady crap going on. and to be the cop that Stivers was, right? She was like this, like, no, I'm not going to take that, and have to be caught up in this conspiracy thing, was like, it was no bueno. It just put her in a different place, and she didn't want to be in. So it was hard. It was hard for that character to come to grips with that. With that storyline.
Did you know about that storyline in advance?
I had no idea. And especially when the shooting happened, and that reaction that you see on Stivers' face, that was real, because I did not. I mean, I knew that what was going to happen in the script, but it was still like the first time that a shot had gone off on set for me, with me there. So
wow.
That was
and you're not a seasoned cop show actor who has them going off in your head all the time. Wow.
And I don't, it's like, I mean, I went to the range and everything, but I had the earphones on and all that stuff. And it was kind of traumatic at the moment. I was like, oh, wow, that's what that sounds like. That stays with you. Yeah.
Especially indoors as well.
And the marble-lined apartment, right? There was nothing soft in that apartment, so it was noisy.
It was noisy. Yeah. And it was, and one thing about going to the gun range that I didn't really expect to happen was that I felt so powerful leaving, walked out of there. I felt powerful. I felt like, wow, this is powerful. And I wanted to have that show in the character as well, that she understood how powerful it is to have this weapon or use this weapon. I don't know if that
was an incredibly intense scene. I mean, after the fight, and Luther, who always was halfway to crazy to begin with, is all beat up, and everybody is on the top of their adrenaline, right, flowing.
Mm-hmm. And Eric was amazing.
Yeah, he's wow. Yeah. And you were in that first episode, I mean, there's so many heavy things in that first episode. I was watching it going, wow, for her to jump in, and I didn't know how green you felt personally, right? But just watching it today, not only are you in the box with Eric, with Luther Mahoney, you're in the box with that really sad, pathetic, but sympathetic character, the little guy, the addict,
Yeah, your informant.
your informant that you were trying to keep safe, but that you were also trying to work to get some information out of. I mean, so many of the scenes in that first episode were just really heavy dramatically, and you carried it off. I mean, you cannot tell watching that you're a greenhorn by any stretch. Now, obviously, you're not a greenhorn because you were doing theater. Obviously, you were an actor already, but still a heavy lift to walk into that situation.
Yeah, I think that.
Well done.
Thank you. I think that if I hadn't been sort of watching and a fan of the show at the time, and I was such a big fan of the writing. The writing was, and I used to say this all the time to Tom, and he rolled his eyes. But it was like the colors that you guys created, the palette, it was just so rich, and just there were the nuances and and like how the storylines, you could have 3 storylines going at the same time, and then they sort of all blended into this one message, and unless you're a fan, you don't really, sort of get it. But I was a fan. I am a fan. I mean, I haven't watched it since it came out, but I just can't. I don't know that I can, but because I mean, it was what it was.
Wow, it's enjoyable to revisit. Yeah, it has not aged. It is as relevant and impressive now as it was then. I mean, like you said, threading the 3 stories, weaving the 3 stories together. That first episode for you, obviously, Reed was already starting to get in trouble, and because it was prior to Luther Mahoney, he's being investigated for corruption from the arson squad. So there's this other story about Reed and his issues, and then Andre and his character had come back from the stroke and is struggling with trying to get back to himself in the squad room, and all those, like you said, are woven together. And at the end, there's this really beautiful montage. Well, it's not so much a montage, but coming together of Andre late one night going home, and this beautiful music in the background, and he goes in and he takes his child out of the crib. And I can't remember if it was before or after, after. Right after that, it cuts to little Vernon, who had been cut loose from the box, who they did not get to back into the aquarium for him to be safe after he was named in the warrant. And there he is, dead on the sidewalk. And it's
just beautiful.
It gave you a real feel for humanity in completely different situations, right? You go from this beautiful suburban sort of, home life where obviously Andre is sad and feeling frustrated about things, and then to the reality of the street, but also just a really sad, poignant moment for that young man too. I mean, yeah, you should watch it because it's still really good.
What was it like being part of such an amazing ensemble cast? Do you have any memories of sort of working with certain actors and yeah, what was that like, sort of slotting in?
It was because we worked so much, at night and stuff like that. So we sort of had to rely on each other for, just to stay awake. Sometimes just to, when's my scene gonna come up finally? It's like, and my daughter was in school, so it was always a thing for me to because trying to get her home from school, I'd often
how old
have
was
to.
she then at that
She
point?
was
How old was she?
9. And
Oh, really? Wow.
and she would come to
Wow.
the set.
Did you bring her to the set? I do not remember.
Yeah, she would come to
your
the
daughter
set,
coming to-
and
wow. Huh.
Richard Belzer was like, he was like an uncle for her. She loved him because he was so funny. And so yeah, she'd come to the set, and that was the only time she ever saw any of Homicide. Was the times when I let her come to the set, because she never watched. I'd never let her watch the show. I think she's watching it now. She's
there you go. She's probably telling you how good it is too.
I don't know. She's well, working with, who did I work with? Callie. I worked with Callie mostly. John Seda was my go-to partner, and Clark sometimes, and Reed Diamond, and then I never worked with was Michelle Forbes, or who else did I work with? I didn't really work with Kyle that much. He may have been in the squad room at some point, in time when everybody was there, but I never really worked with him. So most of the people that I worked with was just, the younger, the people who came on after the 4th season.
Right. And interesting. How was it working with Callie and John? Because we talked in an earlier episode about how not just how amazing the cast was, but they cast the partners usually as polar opposites. If you think about Melissa and Danny and Kyle and Andre. So how was that? And you and Callie were different, but you and John may be more similar, right? Because John came from not from Vice. He came from Auto. What did he come over from? Yeah, he came from Auto. So you both came in, from different departments, but also both had that sort of bad girl, bad guy sensibility, So talk a little bit about that how that interplay between you and Callie and you and John, because that's interesting.
Callie it was so funny because Callie was like, she's the girly girl. Callie's a girly girl, and she and I were different in that I was sort of more tomboyish and more, more of the like, I'm gonna, I like to, kickbox and things like that. And she was more like, I'm going to get my nails done. That kind of thing. Right. So, yeah. And
that's the characters. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how our characters were sort of like, it was like, I asked her one time if she went to the gun range to practice. And she was like, no.
That was a good face. That was a good imitation of her. That was very good.
No. So it was funny.
Interesting. Yeah. And so they paired you because you guys were opposites too.
Yeah. I mean, and that scene that we had, the scene that she and I had in the gym was funny because I don't remember Callie doing a whole lot of work. I didn't know she was naturally beautiful. And I mean, she may have worked out, but we didn't work out together. But that scene was an intense scene, and I think that was one of the better scenes that we did together, and I really enjoyed it. She's an amazing actress.
Describe that. Which episode was that?
Wow, that was after
what was happening.
Michael Michelle was in the show, and her character, I can't remember her character's name, but
Renee Shepherd, yeah.
Renee Shepherd, yeah.
Renee Shepherd, yeah.
She got beaten. She
got a beat down.
Yes,
and Callie and I were talking about it. They took her gun, and I was like, and I was supposed to be like, it could happen, but it never should have happened. Right. It's like,
right.
Yeah, because there was some tension between your two characters, wasn't there?
Yeah, because it was like when you, like I said, I have some cops in my family, and the wearing of the ponytail in the back with the long ponytail swaying in the back, that's not something that you do as a cop, right? Because when you're in an altercation, that's the first thing somebody's going to do to restrain you, right? They'll take your hair, and there's nothing a whole lot you can do, unless you're unless you're like a Bruce Lee kind of character, you can switch it, turn it around and get out of it. But that's why a lot of cops that you see don't have long ponytails hanging around, because you're not supposed to do that. That's not.
Yeah, or they have them really seriously clipped up back there.
Yeah, you
I know
clip
the
it up.
Baltimore
You
County
can-
women cops
you
always
shave it up
very
here.
tightly.
Shave it up here. You
knit
clip
back
it up
there.
and you
Yeah.
tie it in a knot, and you make sure that it's secure. So I'm like all about the authenticity of the character, authenticity of the feel of the scene, and how it's gonna play, and so that was the thing about that scene that Callie and I had, was regarding Shepard, and the fact that she pretty, but she got beat down. But
And how was working with John?
John is John. John, he's always.
You seemed like you were sort of on the same wavelength. The characters were sort of similarly,
He was
tuned.
always funny, always laughing, always joking around. He had, but when the scene started, he was there. He was always there. So it was a lot of like, if you're like, I'm a serious actor, and you're trying to do a scene with John, it's not gonna work. You better get your stuff together before. But he's an amazing actor, and he can do that because he's a good actor. So it's just up to you as the person who's working with him, make sure that you got your stuff together. I love John Seda. He's great. He was great, and I haven't seen him in years. I haven't seen anybody in years, and I hope he's doing really well.
Have you seen The Pacific?
Mm-mm.
It's a Netflix series that sort of followed up on Band of Brothers, but it's World War II in the Pacific. He was in that. Excellent. If you haven't seen it, of course, it is the most brutal World War II film I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's
So
why I didn't watch it.
If you don't go for brutal war films, maybe avoid it. But it was kind of amazing.
Yeah. I think he's also in Chicago Fire or something, so it might be less brutal. But yeah, he's in
a lot
those
of
things.
stuff.
Yeah, he's in Chicago Fire.
So were you going back and forth to Baltimore? Was Chris working from New York? Had you been to Baltimore before you moved in? What was it like moving to Baltimore?
When I first got the show, I was staying in with Stephanie Fontana. Staying with her.
Oh, nice.
And
Where was she in Henderson's Wharf?
Yes, she was staying at the wharf, and she was so she was so lovely, and to let me hang out on her couch. I did a lot of couch surfing when I first got on the show.
Oh, really?
So
at that point, not with your 9-year-old daughter?
No, my daughter was home with my husband, but so I would come up on the train and then go back after the episode was over. And but then when they made me a cast member, I said I can't do that ride all the time. So we found a house on Fell Street, a 3-story, one of those really thin houses. It's really, really small.
They're really cool.
Small staircases and stuff. Because the shipping town of Fell, I guess Fell Street, Fells Point, all those guys were really tiny. So the stairs and everything were small.
Back in the day, people were littler.
They were really
it's true,
small.
Actually.
So it was great living in Fells Point. I loved Cooper's Tavern. Was like it was my kitchen, right? Because I go there. And it was always that was the meeting place for us, was Cooper's, and the Daily Grind, and I don't know if it's still there. Is it there?
Oh yeah, it's still
Is
there.
it? Oh my gosh! Great.
Daily Grind and Cooper's, and then he opened a restaurant next door called Slancha.
Oh really?
An Irish restaurant. Yeah, and it's still Patrick. Patrick's still running them. Yeah,
Patrick. Patrick was awesome. He's awesome. And so we had this like little community that, like, a lot of the people, like Holly Unterberger, she was our neighbor, and we ate at Margaret's all the time, breakfast at Margaret's, that was right next door to me. So she cooked, and I'd smell her food in the morning.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, I can't eat any of that stuff anymore.
Oh no. Melissa talked about that was her favorite spot to
Oh,
eat.
Margaret's was amazing, amazing. And we met there all the time. And then there was a Blue Moon Cafe that we'd go to all the time. And so it was really nice to sort of just be absorb the environment. Like the homicide detective that I did the ride along with, she drove me all the way through and gave me history of, of Pigtown and things like, the other areas of the city and what areas, how they came to be and what happened with the people there. And so it was really, I just felt like I was part of Baltimore and Baltimore was part of me. I really loved it there. I really, really loved it there.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, Pigtown. That's where my mom grew up.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and my great aunt used to say, "Don't call it Pigtown. They don't drive that. They didn't drive the pigs through Pigtown when I was a kid."
How did it become Pigtown?
Well, that's why it was called Pigtown. They the livestock coming off the boats, and they would apparently drive the pigs through town.
They drove the pigs through that part of town.
But yeah, she grew up there on Cross Street.
That's so cool.
So go ahead, Chris.
With the filming, was there such thing as a sort of typical day on Homicide? What was it like sort of working day to day on that show? Were there any sort of things you can sort of tell us?
For me, a day was always a daily grind, first thing. And if I couldn't get there, somebody else would bring me a daily grind. Was always, first thing is makeup. Mary, my favorite, my Mary, she would come in with notes from the network about my hair, usually.
Oh, wow.
Really? About your hair? Really? But your hair was so short. What was wrong with your hair?
They didn't like it. They didn't like my hair.
What were they going to do with it?
They wanted you to have a ponytail.
I guess I was just
That's right. Give her a clip-on ponytail.
I don't know. Maybe I was too butch. I don't know. But they wanted me to be a lot softer. So they would give notes about softening my hair up or softening something up about me. It was too hard. I was like, I thought that's what you wanted. But no, network wasn't really, I think they weren't really happy with that level of authenticity. I'll just say that. I'll just say that. So
yeah. Well, they tried to put makeup on Melissa until she finally was like, no makeup. So
I didn't
same
have
experience.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have that. I mean, like I said, it was my first thing. I didn't know anything. So if they said, "This is how you have to be today," I'm like, "Okay, that's how I have to be today." Okay, so how am I going to do that? How am I going to be softer today? How am I going to make myself softer
It's
today?
a bit of a confusing note, isn't it? Yeah.
A lot of confusing notes from
here's
the
your
network.
Glock. Now be soft.
Yeah. Here's
Make
your
it
gun.
fluffy.
Right.
Do a drug bust, but be soft.
Be hard, but do it nurturingly, right?
Yeah,
do it in a
so
nurturing
weird.
way. So it was a little confusing day to day that you come in and you have notes from the network that would be like, what? How do I do this? So the hair and makeup was amazing, like everything else. The people were so accommodating and everything. And Mary, she was head hair.
Okay.
And so she took me under her wing and she was like, "Come on, girl. We'll figure something out." We'll figure something out. We were always figuring something out. It was just it was a constant stream of, what are we going to do with her? What are we going to do with her? So I think they brought Callie in and then Michael Michelle, because they were softer. Maybe they wanted maybe to take the show in a different direction or something. I don't know. But so dealing with that, but I never had to worry about wardrobe. Wardrobe was always perfect. The only thing, hair, makeup was perfect. The only thing for me was hair. They had a problem with my hair. So every day that was something that I had to deal with. And then, it's just a lot of sitting around, waiting for things to happen, waiting for this scene to be over, and then to get in. And that was something that was hard for me to get into too, because as a theater actor, you're waiting in the background, but when it's going to happen, and it's going to happen soon.
It's
but
2 hours of action,
right? It could take forever. So it's just the day in a life of TV and TV is changing so much now, right? Got all this reality, non-scripted TV that I don't know how they go through their day, but that was it was a lot of waiting around, and a lot of times when I don't know if you know Jelko, who was the
Jelko, sure.
public defender. His trailer was next to mine a lot of the time, so we would sit on our stoop and just wait.
And how did you find the shooting style of the show? Because obviously it's all handheld, and yeah, it seems kind of quite a wild way to shoot.
Okay, so Susan, I had a question for you, and this is something that I've always wanted to know, is that when the camera would start, for me, the camera would start, I would always have this like tick in my neck. I would feel it. And as soon as the camera would start, because I was always like, and I would have this little tick in my neck. And I was always like, I know they see this. I know they see. Did you ever see me do that?
Like, you mean you physically had to do that, or because you were reacting to the sound of the camera?
No, it was always a
nervous
thing. A nervous thing that always happened, and I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if they ever see that. Did you ever see that? Now people are going to look for it.
I have no idea what you're talking about. So, like, every time the camera rolled, you did something?
My neck would go like that. And it would be like, okay, here we go.
You're ready.
Here we go. And I was like, oh, because if I'm on stage, that doesn't translate, right? When the camera is right here, and
right on your face. Well, I'm going to look for that now.
I know. I knew if you were going to, but when the camera, and I maybe worked with Jean maybe a few times, but Alex would get right up in your face like that. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, Jean, I guess, did it. Chris, what Jean came back in to direct.
He did,
I don't remember if it was.
He did the movie,
it was when you were there.
He did do the movie.
And then he did the movie.
Yeah.
Yes. And then he did the movie. Yeah. Interesting.
And I think he operated the camera occasionally when he directed too, didn't he? So that's probably where you got the...
Oh, he always operated the camera, even when he directed. Yeah.
And Alex, got to go. He was,
Sorry, Alex, right? Let's go.
Let's go.
That's funny. That's funny.
So was the fact that you had to always be on when the camera was on, it wasn't the traditional shooting style where you knew you could like slack off because they were doing overs or they were doing a close up on somebody else. But the fact that they could whip around, and they always did at the end for that last beat, was that something that worked for you? Because if you didn't have television or traditional filmmaking experience, was that sort of natural for you that I'm playing all the way through the scene, whether I'm on camera or not? Did that sort of just be, natural to you as a theater actor?
Yeah. Even no matter what, you're on if you're on stage, you're in character no matter what. Even if you think that nobody's watching you, you have to be in character. I did, after the show was over, I did a musical called Wild Dust. And there were two Disney writers who wrote the thing. And I got to the first rehearsal and all of my lines were gone. So I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, really?
So,
you mean not like out of your head, but off the script?
Off the script.
Jeez.
But I was still on stage, right? I was still on stage, but the all my lines were gone. So, as an actor, you just have to roll with it. And it's not always fair, things that happen. But you have to be creative, right? and you always have to be on. You always have to be on, always be doing something, right? So I didn't have any lines, but what I could do was break the fourth wall and talk to the audience with my eyes and with what I was doing, right? So I wasn't pulling focus at that point, but I had to do something. I wasn't going to stand there and not do anything, right? I wasn't just going to be, I'm behind the bar. I'm just gonna... But if you're behind the bar and you're the bartender, what are you doing? You know, what is it? What is the part? What do bartenders do? So those are the kinds of things that you know, you're ready for the camera to whip back around. You're waiting for it. I was always waiting for the camera to whip back around.
That's cool. Any memories of directors you worked with? Because obviously you're directed by Clark and Kyle on a couple of episodes. And then you've had Peter Medak and various other directors. Any directors stand out for you?
Yeah, I think your first episode was Ken Fink, who came back quite a bit.
Yeah, he and I had a big argument.
Let's hear about that.
I love Ken Fink.
Was that about characterization, or
it was late and we were doing a scene. And all the guys were, you know, John and all the Clark and all the guys were in the scene, and Ken wanted to make this about the guys, you know. It's like, and the girls were, I guess, I don't know if Callie was in the scene. I can't even remember, but it was. I was tired, and I was I'm always the one who's like, oh, okay, whatever you want to do, whatever. But on this day, for some reason, I was like, hey, hell to the no. I am not sitting around here for hours and hours and hours for you to then tell me that I get to stand over here and just be quiet. I'm part of this scene, you know? You didn't make me sit here for hours so that I could be background. You're not paying me for that.
Right.
I got really kind of mad about it, and I started to be the angry Black woman that people think we are. But because it wasn't right. It wasn't right, and I had to tell them about it, and I got loud about it, and some people got mad at me about it. But and I had never done anything like that before. But at that point, I was tired, and I wasn't going to play that crap about, you know, you're the woman, you stand to the side.
Yeah.
No,
Good for you.
not going to happen.
Melissa talked about standing up for herself too. Yeah.
And I love Ken Fink. He, you know, you have to. And I love Ken Fink. I invited him over to our house for, you know, we hung out together, and it's fine. It was fine. But you have to speak up for yourself, because if you don't, and I found that out so many times because I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing, and people weren't telling you, right? You had to either ask questions or find out on your own, or you had to sort of fall into the answer somehow. And at that point, I was like, I didn't really give two F's about it at that point. I just wanted to go home, and I was tired, and I didn't feel like this was fair.
Yeah.
And I stood, and I thought that this is, in this moment, I'm gonna say something, and you're gonna hear me.
Stivers would have done that too.
Did you feel as a woman sometimes that you were made just to be background in certain situations? Yeah.
And, you know, and sometimes it's fine. When you're in the squad room and you're just at your desk and you're hanging around, and that's fine. That's the work. That's the scene. But, you know, don't make me stand around here, wait for hours and hours just to stand in the background and do nothing.
Yeah, totally.
No,
totally.
I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Well, flipping it around, what was it like being directed by your fellow castmates like Clark and Kyle?
Kyle never directed me. I don't remember Kyle directing me. I don't remember. Maybe Clark did direct one episode that I was in, but mostly I don't remember. I worked with what's the female directors?
Kathy Bates
and
Catherine Bigelow.
Catherine Bigelow. Oh God, she was amazing. She was amazing. And she's like, and I felt so vindicated that I had gone to the gun range and done the work that I did, because she came up to me and she said,
all right,
good gun work. And I was like,
Good for you.
yes, yes.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, because she knew her guns by the time she got there, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
were
she
you
did.
better than the guys then on this?
I don't know, but it was so
Probably
funny.
the ones that didn't do that.
Like the one funny thing that I remember is like that we were working at night and this we heard this guy go, stop that guy. And it was a guy who had just like shoplifted from one of the CVS or something, and he ran onto the set, and we all had like uniforms and guns, and he was like, ah. It was so
that
funny.
was a trip, wasn't it?
It was so funny. And the cop was, and the store cop, the security guard, he was like, what? What's happening here?
He called for backup, but he got a lot more.
Yeah, he did. He did. He caught his guy that night.
That's right. Everybody had their Glocks out when he came around the corner.
But yeah, you worked with some amazing directors like Catherine Bigelow and Kathy Bates, etc. And yeah, Catherine Bigelow is such an amazing action director. So she was brought in for the Fallen Heroes episode, wasn't it?
That was
Yeah.
that was a big one. That was a big one. So yeah, it was big. Who was the guy who shot up the
Junior Bunk? Yeah, it was Mekhi Phifer.
Yeah. He's so amazing. And so I was like, he was such a baby when he did Homicide. I was like, and then I've seen him, through the years. I'm like, oh my gosh, he was such a baby, and now look at him. He's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there's quite a lot of amazing guest cast. I don't know if there's anybody else who comes to mind who you work with and now you see them years later and think, oh my goodness, they were so small or whatever when you worked with them.
So many people from Homicide are gone now. Like,
yeah, that's sad. And your question earlier, yeah, Lou DiGiamo was gone.
Oh, yeah, he was amazing. And Yaphet and Richard Belzer, that was a shock for me. It's like, wow, just to be on the same planet and not know that he's on the planet. was, it's like, I guess, it's that way for everybody, but it's like Richard Belzer was such a staple in television for so many years on so many shows, and it's like you look at something like that, you expect to see him there reading his newspaper.
Right.
Yeah, because he did something like 18 seasons of Law and Order after Homicide. So he played, amazing. I think he might have the record for the longest running TV character. He must have.
Yeah, I think he does. Didn't you tell me that? Yeah, I think somebody said he was the longest running TV character, going from show to show as the same character.
Yeah. Because I know Kelsey Grammer's trying it with Frasier, but I think Belzer might have done it. I don't know. I have to check. Somebody have to fact check.
18 years. Wow.
Yeah.
So you're talking about night work before. We did work a lot of night work. We'd start, I'm sure you remember, Monday morning would be a 7 a.m. call, and then Wednesday would be a noon call or a 1 p.m. call. And then by Friday, it was 3 or 4 or 5. Obviously, you don't work at night. Well, you do work at night in the theater, don't you? So was that
very late nights in the
was
theater.
that a transition, or were you used to being coming out of the theater at midnight?
Oh man, there's nothing like it, being in the theater till the wee hours of the morning, but you're working, right, the whole time. In theater, you're always working. I mean, there are times when people are working on their own scenes or whatever, but everybody's working, right? And in TV, that's not necessarily the case. You're sitting, and you could be working. You probably should be working, but on something. But it's just so much sitting around. And when it's late, and you've got night shoots and stuff, and when you're a parent, and and you miss so much. when those late nights are happening, and it can throw your life off a little bit. But that's the cost of the work.
So was Chris down here? Was Chris in Baltimore with you most of the time?
Mhm.
Okay, well that's good. At least you had
in the beginning, no, I drove back and forth, but then we rented that house on Fell Street, and so we moved everything down to Baltimore, and it was my daughter was at the park school.
Oh, it's out near my way.
Yeah, so she was there, and we loved that school. It was good for her, and Andre Brower he was so kind, such a kind person. When my daughter did finally come and join me here, join me there, he gave me names of people who could babysit her, and he gave me some pointers on how to do it, because I didn't
Right, because they had just Michael
it.
at the time. They had he was a toddler. Their son was a toddler at the time. I remember three or four.
And his wife is an actress, and she was doing her own thing, and she's an amazing actress in her own right. So they both had to deal with how to do it with kids.
Right. It's funny, and I often forget that Yaphet's daughter was a cop, a regular background actress at times, and the scene where I was just watching it this morning, where Luther Mahoney gets off because you guys you have a lot of evidence, but nothing that is going to hold up in court, about the fact that he knew that how the other drug dealer was murdered, and that there was a Glock on the table in front of him, and that he was shot in the back of the head. But that when they went into the home, the front door was open. So anyway, so Luther Mahoney's case falls apart, and they let him go. And the person that escorts Luther Mahoney down the steps and out the door is Yaphet's daughter. And then you and Reed, or you and Clark, are out front as Luther's getting let go. It was a night scene as Luther's letting get go, into his limousine or whatever, like super high luxury car, and he has this huge grin on his face. But it was funny. I was watching. I was like, oh yeah, Yaphet's daughter was also in the show from time to time in full uniform, And then she sort of toddles back up.
There
the
are
steps
a lot
in
of
the
people
background.
who, that just were always there. The background people who supported us. So, just in all ways, they whatever, they were always so amazing, and background people don't really get a whole lot of credit, but they create the scene,
Yeah, and the fact that we had the regular squad room background extras, they were regular actors there all the time. It wasn't like whoever we happened to pull in this week. It was the same group of background police officers and office staff. So that, I think, really heightened the reality of the show.
Yes.
Because you recognize people back there behind you, right? Oh, there's that guy again. Yeah, he's really a cop. There he is again. Or she.
I know. It was so, it's like what I remember at the end, when we were still living there when the show ended, and it was loadout day. People were taking the set down, and Tom was there, and he and we were walking through the set, walking around. You could hear all the hammering and all that stuff. And for me, it was such a sad moment, because it was, how it's your first thing, and it's been years, and it's ending, and and that walk around the set with Tom, for me, I'll just never forget it. It's a moment that is indelibly, it's in my brain. And he and I walked past Stivers' desk, and he went and took her certificates off the wall and handed them to me.
I was going to say, what'd you take with you? You should have taken some souvenirs while you were there.
And the nameplate from the desk.
Oh, nice.
He handed me all those things, and
that's brilliant.
And I just started bawling, and he gave me a big hug, and it was like he is one of my in my soul family, and he's just means so much to me.
He's an amazing guy, really, really sweet guy.
Amazing talented guy, amazing human being. And the writing is just, it's just impeccable. And his professionalism and his dedication to the art and to the craft. And he's just if you want to have a role model, that is the person that you should choose, because he has it all. He has it all.
And mentor. How many people he mentored?
Oh, so many.
Yeah, in that situation. That are doing really well now, right?
Julie Martin. Julie, she's
Julie, David Simon. I mean, David the people Simon. That came in green, that are now very successful long-term producers and writers. So
and writers, yeah.
If you felt like that day, did you know the movie was coming along? Do you remember getting that call and what that felt like?
Yeah, it felt like got one more time, got one more chance to do it. Yay. Getting the band back together. Let's do that.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. They got everybody together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was good that it happened then.
Because it was what, a year, 2 years later? It wasn't what?
About that, yeah.
Yeah, because it was 2000, I think the movie was. Or is it?
God, I had to rebuild the whole set and everything. Wow. Yeah, it's crazy.
I didn't work on the movie, so I was already off being a reporter, a newspaper reporter by then. Bit of a change of career.
David Simon and all the wonderful writers that we had, and just so many writers came through that show and went on to do so many great things, and like I've met people who knew Tom from like St. Elsewhere, I think. St. Elsewhere, and they were like, this guy, he's amazing. And he and David and Barry and David, and they created something special, very, very special. And I'm very, very happy to have been a part of it.
Yeah, so many people we've talked to, unbidden, because I didn't know this when we decided to start this podcast, which sort of happened happenstance-ally, if that's a word.
It is now.
Yeah, happenstance-ally.
We'll call it a word. We'll call it a word.
Write that down. That so many people, crew, writers, creators, cast, said 30 years later, and like that was the last thing I did in the business. So it was, it was very close to my heart because that was the last thing I did. I had already been in the business 20 years. And I left a couple months before the show was finished, and I didn't do the movie. So, but people that stayed in the business, which were most of everybody, 30 years later, even though they'd been on many, many things since then, said that was the best experience of their careers. So what was it? I mean, you articulated that a little bit, but what made it so special? Why? What for you made it one of the best experiences?
I felt safe. I mean, as safe as you can be in Hollywood, right? Hollywood is a Shark Tank. So, I just felt it was my first thing. So it was, I felt safe because I didn't know any better for a lot of things, but I just felt like it was a family, because it had gone on for so long. And even though it's like, real families, sometimes you have cousins that you don't know, you don't hang with them, but they're part of your family. And the older cast and the newer cast, they came together. Even though a lot of us didn't work together, we were still part of that family, and everybody still wanted the project to be the best that it could be. And you could see that in the performances, you could see that in the production work, you could see that in the writing, it just, across the board, you look everywhere and you could see people going, I want this to be the best that it can be, right? It's not, like whatever, schlock, whatever. It was, this is real. This is special. And it was.
And then you got that little bit of a reunion with the movie.
Yeah. I mean, they had a reunion just a few days ago, actually, last week or something.
Yes, they did. Saturday. We were looking for you. Where were you?
I'm home. No, couldn't get there.
It was pretty trippy, I gotta say. It was pretty. It was wonderful. It was kind of amazing.
Good. I'm so glad.
Yeah. Well, we missed you.
Oh.
We were looking for you. Chris and I were talking about you.
Yeah.
I think Tony's going to be here. Where's Tony? Did you see
we
Tony?
were.
I
Yeah,
really wanted
Tony.
to be there. It's just that, it's just like, we just bought a house and
I hear you.
and the funds just weren't there. So just couldn't do it just for a weekend. If it had been a week, maybe I could have tried to do that, but I couldn't get together for just a weekend. But I'm sorry that I couldn't be there. I missed everybody, and I was really hoping that I could see people. But, maybe someday we'll get together again.
Well, they'll all hear you now, so say hi to
Hello,
everyone.
everyone.
Yeah.
Well, I hope they make the reunion more of a regular thing, 'cause there's a lot of, obviously a very tight community on that show. And weirdly for me, it felt like being at somebody else's high school reunion. So it was a bit weird.
Except for everybody recognized Chris.
They
which was
recognized
pretty
me. It was
interesting.
hilarious. I felt like a celebrity. It was really weird. It's always been going, I recognize your voice. It's like, oh my goodness, it's really weird. But it was wonderful.
Yeah,
it was really nice
not
to
a
be
lot
there.
of British actors or crew people. So yeah, Chris, I think you stood out a little.
Yeah.
Yes.
Patrick is fine. He's doing well. Good.
Yeah, he was there. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to say hi to him. He was sort of up in the front, and I missed him. But yeah, and we actually had breakfast. Do you remember Lulu, the set dresser? She came into town, and on Saturday morning, and Chris was already here, and we went next door to Slancha and had breakfast together. So
That's nice.
yeah,
You see that picture, this picture back here? This picture right here is a picture that we had a fundraiser for a community center in Baltimore, and they had an auction. And it was the first auction that I could ever participate in. And it was me and Giancarlo Esposito auctioning,
nice.
bidding
The
for this picture. We were both bidding for this picture right here. And I won the first time, because there are two, and there's another one on this wall over here.
And what are they pictures of?
Pictures
What
of little
are they?
kids touching trees. I don't think I can get over there, but they have their hands on the trees, and he and I got into this bidding war over this second picture.
Thanks, Giancarlo.
And
We'll get his side of the story when we get him
this
on.
bidding war, and he won, of course. He won. I was tapped out, so he won. But at the end of the season, at end of the series, he sent it to me.
Oh, really? He sent
He
you
sent
one?
the picture that he
That's
won.
really
That's sweet.
It's so that now I have matching sets.
Good set.
Oh, you
that's
were bidding on the
amazing.
second one. Oh, you had the bidding war over. Oh,
And then
interesting.
He's
Wow.
so sweet, and he sent that to me after the show was over. That was very very sweet, very sweet. So it was like I'm saying, it's the sort of a family situation where we're always going to have that connection. We're always going to have that little bit of a connection of this perfection that we were all a part of. It just felt like for me
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. What was it like working with John Collar? Because he comes in season 7 as Giardello's son, and he's such a great
I
actor.
didn't really work with him, so I mean, I'm sure he's. I mean, I met him, and
In the same episode, right?
But I've watched his work, and I've seen his work for years and years and years, and he's an amazing actor, and he and his family are just adorable. So.
On a slightly different note, so you mentioned earlier, obviously you lived in Baltimore for some time, and you've even mentioned Cooper's Tavern already as a place you like to go to, but Baltimore's also famous for its food, and I was wondering if you had any favourite dishes that kept you going whilst you were there, because we've had scrapple, we've had crab, we've had gizzards. I was wondering if anything you liked that you enjoyed while you were there.
When I first got there, like they had a picnic or something, and it was a crab thing, and they threw all the crabs on the table, and people. And I'm not a shellfish person, so I. But
you recoiled, I'm sure.
I was like,
that's what people do from out of town. They're like, what the hell is that?
And all the bay seasoning and everything, and people were diving in with their hands, and I was like, okay, I like a good crab cake, but I like it in the restaurant, cooked already.
Yep, already dealt with. Yeah.
I don't want to deal with these legs and stuff and sinewy stuff.
Yeah, it's not often. I mean, people when they first hear crabs, they think, "Oh, I've had Alaskan crabs, or I've had this kind of, and I break the leg off, or I've had a lobster where they've already cleaned it out for me." First time somebody sees a Baltimore steamed crab and sees somebody. Oh, I had a friend when I lived in LA who shall remain nameless. I don't want to embarrass her. And we went, there was one crab house when I lived in LA called the Maryland Crab House. I was like, oh yeah, right. And anyway, we went there and we got the steamed crabs. And when I cracked it open, she almost fell out of her chair. I think she turned green too. But if you grow up with it, you're used to it. Yeah, it doesn't. So in Fells Point, you mentioned Margaret's. Were there any other dishes besides the scary crabs that you experienced?
I love that Blue Moon Cafe for pancakes and stuff, even though I didn't really eat a whole lot of pancakes back then.
Was that the one uptown? Not in the area, the one that was uptown, like near Hopkins?
No, it was in Fells Point, but it was like off the beaten path. It was I can't really remember exactly where it was, but it was a little off the beaten path. And
I remember it. I'm thinking of something else. Yeah.
You go in there, it was so crowded.
Blue. The building was blue. Yeah.
So crowded, and everybody's like this.
Yes, and they were famous for the pancakes.
Famous for their blueberry pancakes. I think it was blueberry pancakes or something. And my daughter loved that place, and so we'd go there all the time. I always like Cooper's was the only thing I ever got at Cooper's was Caesar salad and French fries. That was my dish.
That was your thing.
Their fries are good. I had their fries when I first arrived in Baltimore. They were
great
nice fries.
Really good fries.
Yeah, they have good food.
Really good fries.
And it's so great that they're still there.
And it was the only time that I really sort of got off my diet was when I was go to Cooper's to get some French fries. And
that's the perfect food pairing.
I know, right?
I'm sorry, that's not off your diet. Come on, Caesar salad and French fries is like a perfectly balanced meal. I mean, I do that all the time, except this Greek salad and French fries.
Oh,
yeah, it was.
Sorry, what else?
No,
Were you just going to say something else? I'm sorry.
I think that's about it. I didn't because
no scrapple for you then.
I met
no organ meats for you. Come on.
From college, I had a friend from college who grew up in Philadelphia, and scrapple was is a big thing there. And when I went to visit her, she made some for me, and it was okay. It was okay, but I'm a Black woman. I know about chitlins and stuff like that. I never eat them. I never eaten them.
Right.
But I know that they exist, and I'm not really a big fan of Scrapple. All of that to say, I'm not a big fan of Scrapple.
That's all right. It's fair enough. It's fair enough.
It's a once a year thing.
Yeah, I had my first ever go at it. I had my first ever experience of it in Washington D.C. and it was good. It was all right with fried eggs and some ketchup. It was.
Yeah. Just don't look at the ingredient label.
No, it's best. A lot of things are best not to.
Yeah. Which is why I was like, we've done the chitlins thing.
Yeah.
But
Either of you done haggis? That's
haggis. Oh my gosh,
Chris, you got to get us some haggis. Oh my gosh.
More about Scrapple. or the Greek version of haggis called kokoretsi, which is even more exciting.
I don't know what that is.
It's best barbecued.
I used to work. I did some catering work at the British consulate residence.
Oh, wow.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I learned a lot about British foods,
There's a very bad
about
one.
How bad it is. Just kidding.
There is some really good. I think since the 80s, British food got better.
It's supposed to be better now.
It is.
Right?
I think from the 80s, something changed. Everybody kept boiling everything prior to the 80s. So,
yeah. I think
when I
my
was in
favorite
England,
was
it
cheese
was probably
on toast.
the 80s. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's kind of comfort food.
That's
Cheese
the
on
only,
toast, yeah.
That was the only safe thing to get. I just remember being in London and we figured out pretty quickly it was like, don't eat British food. Go to the Indian restaurant. Go to the whatever ethnic restaurant is on your street where you're staying. Don't eat in the pub.
It's funny you should say that. The most popular place in to eat out in London or in the UK generally is either Nando's, which is a Portuguese chicken place, or Indian places. So
Indian
but there are one or two,
or Italian.
Yeah,
I think we had
Italian's big. Yeah.
There was a place too that served sushi. Was it Stevens, or it was on the corner of like Fell Street? Or
oh yes, John Stevens. Yes, John Stevens. They were famous for their, and all I remember was the vegetable sushi.
Oh.
It didn't have any fish in it. Maybe I just never got them. But yeah, and we would go in there and get their sushi. Yeah. Absolutely. It's called something else now. It's not John Stevens now, and I can't recall what it's called now. So what? So back it up a little bit. Why do you? When we talk, this usually gets addressed on and off throughout our conversations, but the show has retained its relevance.
Yeah.
Why do you? 30 years later, why do you think that's the case?
I think because it speaks to the same human condition, that just keeps perpetuating itself, because, we are here on this planet, this learning planet, and history will, always sort of come around again. So the storylines, they may be of people who lived a while ago, but they're still relevant. The inner city is still the inner city. Cops are still cops, and cops are gonna always be cops. And then you're always gonna have victims. So those stories will always be told, and sadly, they will always be told. And I just think that the performances that were given, and the writing, everything, all of that stuff, is just, it transcends time at this point. I think you'll always be able to find something in the characters at some point in time that resonates with you on any given day,
Yeah, because it's too about the, I was just thinking as you were saying that, it's also the struggle people have dealing with all the human struggle between all those dynamics. It's universal.
Yeah, it's so weird, because when you're doing it, you go, well, years from now, nobody will ever see this, right? I think.
Well, they will now. Because there was a question at one point whether anybody would actually, but yeah.
And I did not, and I honestly, after the movie was over, I didn't think that it would ever come back, especially because, I mean, my husband, he was so good at getting these artists to put their music in the show. The question about the music was why it hadn't come back, because there was so much tied up into the rights and all that stuff. So I'm really glad they got that settled.
Yeah.
But we had some really good, amazing artists who contributed to the overall feel of the scene. Their music sat in the scene so perfectly that it was able to wrench and bring out emotion from the viewers, that hit them in a place that still hits them, in that gut place. And the music really sort of like put the period on it and said, okay, this is where we're going.
Yep, exactly. And much of that music was retained, but some of it wasn't.
Really?
So it's interesting to hear their attempts at, well, it wasn't an attempt because they did it, but their what they replaced it with to try to make, to retain the same kind of emotional power as all the original music did. And yeah, kudos to Chris and the music people, because all that original stuff was just we all then talked about how great the music was. Remember, were you there? Were they still giving out? They'd give out the cassette at the end of the year of all the music that had been used in the episodes, or much of it.
No.
Yeah, and I can't remember Chris, who put those together? I don't know if Tom put them together.
I
had a bunch of cassettes stolen out of my car, so I don't have those.
Yeah, we should have asked the reunion, shouldn't we? Actually, I don't know. I think it was.
It'd be nice
Tom.
if somebody could make some copies.
Yeah, if anybody still has them
on the CDs or something. But yeah, they were amazing.
Yeah.
So any other sort of final thoughts or takeaways from your time in the show? You want to mention?
Oh,
it's been great talking to you, by the way.
There was the one time that I felt like I brought all of Toni to the show, and it wasn't on the show. It was Homicide Live. I don't know if you guys went to Homicide Live.
Somebody posted a poster about that. That was at Center Stage, right? I somehow never saw any of those.
It was so much fun, and it just sort of made it feel like, I mean, it felt like we were in school like that, like we were in high school anyway, and it felt like the talent show. I mean, we just had the reunion now, right? And it felt like this was the talent show, and people got up and they did poetry, and I was able to sing, and it was just like, it was fun, and we did fun things like that, and I don't know if people have that sort of camaraderie these days with the shows that are being done. I'm sure that there is some, and I hope there is more, but that's what I remember from this. Not just the actors. I mean, it was just more like the support and the production people, and all the way down to the cops on the street who did traffic. And I just want to give them their flowers, because they did a wonderful job, and they deserve it. They deserve their flowers. And just, if no one else has ever said thank you, I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts on that show. You forget about all the little things and all the people that were there making sure our perimeter was clear. And yeah, there weren't cars driving willy-nilly through the set. Although that did happen depending on where we were. Sometimes we didn't stop the traffic. Just
but that's
didn't.
okay. Sometimes it was like that. And it was like,
Yeah.
but it just thank you. I'm just grateful that that's been a part of my life and something that I can look back on and go, I did that and I'm proud of it. And it's a great part of my life.
I hear that in your voice. Anything you want to mention, the projects you're working on now or coming up, or?
I do books on tape. I do that.
Yeah. Talk about any new or particular ones that you really enjoyed doing. Because I heard you talking about how interesting it was to do to act out all the voices, including obviously male voices when you're doing a voiceover, and how you prepare for that.
Yeah, I did now I can't remember. No, it's just left my head. But I did this one book on the biography of this actress, and I actually had to have an Irish, your side of the pond accent. I don't know how well I did, but I tried. I'll give it that good college try. I'll always get in there and try. So, yeah, no, I mean, I'm not really, I've, for a while after, like I did Oz and I did a few other things, Heroes, and, I did a really short thing in Heroes where I was a doctor, and I was the doctor who came in when the cheerleader was dead, and she left the table. I come back, she's gone. So, after that, I did a lot of work on myself. I went out to the desert on many occasions and started to really just sort of work on myself, pulling my energies and my soul, my soul's purpose and all that stuff together, and moving sort of more into like a spiritual place of being, and and I'm a Reiki
really?
master.
Wow.
And I do Reiki for actors to help actors, like when when I was acting, and it was hard sometimes to figure out what to do with that extra energy, or if you have blocks or things that you're trying to do and you just feel like you're being stopped. So I work with actors to do that. And help them with their coaching and lines and characterizations and stuff like that. But so that's what I kind of want to move into. I wouldn't turn down acting, but I really want to help actors. Like it's hard for Black women actresses right now, like in the business, and I mean, I feel for them, like Taraji P and actors who are having a hard time, and so I want to be one of those people who are there to support, because I know how it is when you don't have any support and you're sort of out there by yourself and trying to figure it all out. So that's what I'm working on now, is giving that support to actors.
Well, this has been absolutely terrific. Thank you for spending so much time with us, and thank you for sharing and being candid, and really, really.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's been fun. It brings up a lot of good memories, and that makes my day.
Good.
Thank you.
So that was Toni Lewis, and I thought that was a really interesting interview. And I think one of the key takeaways that I found quite interesting is like how she was a fan of the show before she came on the show, very similar to Reed Diamond. And I found that super fascinating. Was there anything that stood out for you?
Yeah, I'd agree with that she was extra conscious of the show because her husband, Chris, and we should mention Chris Tergesen, was the music supervisor and music coordinator on the show for 113 episodes, 94 to 99. And so she, before she came on the show, knew about the show, knew about how good it was, and also was familiar with Tom Fontana and what a great showrunner he was and great writer he was way prior to Homicide. But I do love that, this is another eye-opening thing I mentioned in the intro, that people were aware of the show and just went in and said, I got to be on the show. She went in and auditioned, maybe not specifically for that role, just the audition.
Yeah. What was surprising, actually, was this is her first lead role in a show and her first role in a show. So, and she handles it with such confidence, immediately off the bat, as you described when you were chatting with her, she has such kind of confidence and, she was thrown in the deep end because she plays off a lot of very interesting, and established characters in the show during that first episode. So, no, hats off to her. It was an amazing debut.
Yeah, I can't imagine being in that situation. So you're a greenhorn, you come in to this, has to be intimidating ensemble cast in the show that you're already a huge fan of, admiring how well it's produced and written and acted. And then to come in as a character who is a seasoned, cynical, veteran detective, right? She doesn't come in, and we mentioned this in the interview, she doesn't come in like Reed comes in. He was a seasoned detective, but not a seasoned homicide detective, and also came in green to the homicide unit. So I guess there's a similar path because Reed comes from fire and she came from narcotics.
Yeah.
But that I mentioned in the interview, that auspicious entrance from her, where she's in the ME's office and Clark bursts in looking for Stivers to punch him out, figuring it's a man, to punch him out because she's been investigating the same drug crime because she's familiar with Mahoney and the Mahoney gang. And he comes in and says, something like, where's Stivers? I need to punch him out. And she jumps right up in his face and says, take your best shot, pal. And how intimidating that must have been. And also, I forget, this was 30 years ago. These are young people. Right? Many of them were younger than me. At the time, I was just turning 40 somewhere during the show, and they were younger. A lot of them were younger than me. And for her to say how nervous she was, and it just did not register that she was either on camera or off camera. She was fabulous. And I wish, she'd been in more episodes because she was terrific.
Yeah, I would like to have seen more Stivers and even more episodes, maybe even devoted to her. I think only it's in season 7 where she gets partnered with Michael Michelle, that they really have an episode that sort of focuses on her. Which is a shame because I thought she was such a fantastic character. Yeah, so hopefully there might still be, jokingly we were saying about there should be a spin-off, Captain Stivers or Commander Stivers, or whatever it was.
Yes, absolutely. We have a whole raft of spin-offs that we're ready to have. And she also talked, it was interesting, and Melissa mentioned this too, these notes they would get from NBC about softening this or with the hair or whatever. But when she came in, she was a badass. When she walked into that scene, with her leather jacket and her puka shells, coming over from narcotics, she had to be a badass, right? At least on TV, you got to be a badass if you're a narcotics detective. I don't know if they have to be in real life, but you would think you got to be, right? But as the show progressed through season, I guess she started in season 5?
Yeah, season 5.
Yeah. They definitely softened her, which I personally think is a shame because to me, when you think back to that era, so 30 years ago, this is a woman cop that's got to function in very heavily, very macho, very entrenched male universe. And a lot of times the way you do that as a woman in a male universe is to be a badass, is to be tough as they are or tougher. And I wish they had left her like that, because they definitely softened her wardrobe and her hair and all kinds of things later on. And, who knows, that may have been because they knew that the public wanted A, B, C, or D. I don't know. But yeah, she was really impressive to talk to. But like you said, the most impressive thing is the impression she made, even though she was new at it. Well, obviously not new. You mentioned that too. Not new at acting, but new at television and network television.
Yeah, and I admired her commitment to reality as well, because she mentioned that she was part inspired by her niece, who was a serving police officer, I believe, in Chicago. And on top of that, she took the time to go to a firearms range to kind of familiarize herself with the Glock pistol, which is what her character used during the show. And I think she mentioned that some other actors didn't quite take it to that level. But and then she got it complimented by Catherine Bigelow a few years later for her proficiency of a handgun. So it kind of paid off. So
yes, awesome. And Catherine Bigelow with no guns, right?
Yeah. So she so it was really cool, because obviously she knew a lot about cops because she grew up in a family of police officers and things. And I think she was saying as well, her niece, because she was so small, she would like throw herself into fights as her way of dealing with it, which is quite funny. And it says a lot about her character. You kind of see that she's sort of this coiled spring is the way I would describe her character when you first meet her, and it's really interesting.
Absolutely. And yeah, she mentioned the gun range, like 3 blocks from where we were from the sets. And I don't know where that was. I know where the gun range is. We did shoot at a gun range out in the county once, and I know where that one is, but that's interesting. I didn't know there was one that close. But also, even with that, when she talked about, having been at the gun range, having had, the noise canceling headphones on while you're shooting, when we did the scene with Luther Mahoney, the Luther Mahoney shooting in that, in that penthouse condo with the glass walls and the marble floors, how much it struck her. Like she said, that look of surprise on her face was real because of how loud and scary it was to be in a room with gunfire. And I thought that was that's a pretty candid admission to make as an actor, that kind of freaked you out a little bit, even though she'd been familiar with guns and handling the guns and everything. So that just shows you that, at some level we're on the set with that. The camera people probably had earplugs in, those little foam earplugs, that don't do a whole lot. But yeah, it can get pretty raw when you're working especially in a small room, a hard room like that with gunfire.
I bet it's also the shockwave too, because that's the other thing with a loud bang. You get a kind of shockwave that goes with it, and it's not fun when guns go off. I've been on a few gun ranges, even with the big headphones, you still feel it, especially when other people are shooting. I was in Arizona when somebody was using an AK-47 in my presence, and you could feel that. Crikey. So, yeah.
Yeah, you can feel it. I don't know if have I told that story on air about being on Scarface, and the guys on the crew wanted to shoot off with, they were using Ingram, which is funny.
Yeah. Namesake
Ingram
gun,
machine guns. And the prop guy would come out, and my camera truck was parked in the alley between a bunch of sound stages. And they would come out into the alley so the guys on the crew could shoot off the machine gun, and I'd be in the truck and nowhere to go, in the truck in the dark room, and I'd hear the prop master yell, "Fire in the hole!" And then there's this massive amount of machine gun fire would go off right next to me in the truck. It was everybody was pretty jumpy by the end of that for sure. But yeah, I also thought it was interesting, her recognition of not just how good the writing was, but how the writers merged and wove together multiple storylines.
Yes.
And how you didn't really know it as you're watching it, but somewhere in the middle, by the end of the show, you realize those 3 storylines or 4 storylines had a similar message or theme that's driven home sometimes, not always, but driven home sometimes by one of those montages with music, and then the music bumps it, to another emotional level, which was one of the things she appreciated about the show, was how they did that.
Yeah. No, very well done. That very well done.
And how much she talked about it really feeling like a family, and that was a poignant story when she talked about the last day going up onto the set with Tom, and him pulling down Stivers's awards and recognitions and certificates and giving them to her. Yeah. It'd be interesting to hear how many people. We should ask people that. That'd be a good bumper question to ask people at the end, in addition to the food question. Did you take anything with you?
I have to disguise
Do you
voices.
Have any souvenirs?
I have to disguise voices for that.
Right. We'll pretend we didn't hear it. But did you take any souvenirs when you left? Wouldn't you love to have one of those detective? One of the detective manuals.
Oh yeah.
That it was Nick. Nick said Gary Daddario handed him the detective manual that he said that the images are still emblazoned in his brain. Wow. But it must have been cool too for her, for Chris, her husband Chris, to be working on the show.
Oh, yeah.
So I think maybe, even more of a close connection with the show.
And her brother-in-law as well, was it Lee, played the police officer who got shot in season 1, didn't he? And he was blinded. As Lee Tergerson was that actor. Right. So no, real big homicide connections there.
Yeah, and in general, like many people have said, but it felt maybe even more emotional with her, how much she loved being on the show and how much that experience meant to her. And how much, and how deeply emotionally attached she still feels to the show and to the creators and to Tom, and people that made it possible. I thought that was great. It was great that she talked to us about that.
Yeah.
And that she wanted to support everybody, even the traffic cops, like the Baltimore traffic cops that were helping us deal with the traffic and the pedestrian traffic, and which also the PAs were doing. But how many peripheral people, even outside the crew, that helped us out.
Yeah. No, it sounds like Homicide was a very formative experience for her. So yeah, excellent. Well, I think that about covers everything. Unless there's anything else you want to say, but I really enjoyed that interview, and thank you again, Toni, for her time on the show. It was really great just to chat for those sort of 2 hours. It was really very pleasant.
Yeah, thanks, Toni. And she mentioned that she's now doing work supporting actors. So I thought that was also really telling about her. And her personality, that she went there, that she wants to help people, which I think is the kind of person she is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks, Toni.
Thank you, Toni. And thank you, everybody out there, for listening. I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we did. And we will catch you on the next one. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.